So AEW Full Gear, that's what it's called. Full Gear is in the books, and it's time here at WrestleJuice to take a look at your guys' hot takes. If you want my star ratings and my full podcast length review, it's over at the other channels, the Going In Raw channel, youtube.com/Steven Larson, and youtube.com/Friendo Club TV, Friendo Club. I don't know, whatever it is. Anyways, what a wild show. Tons of surprises. I did not expect a lot of the things that happened to happen. Let's go and see what your hot takes are. First up, the J-Raw or JRA 69 nice says Hangman is not interesting enough or big enough to big world champion. I'm assuming you meant be world champion. But what do you mean when you say he's not big enough or interesting enough? Because I think he is interesting enough. I think he's big enough, but maybe you mean popularity wise. Are you like a Braun Strowman type guy? You need the big meaty dudes to be champion? I don't know what you mean exactly. But the interesting enough thing I can sink my teeth into to a degree. I think he's really interesting chasing the title. Tony Khan is yet to crack what Hangman Adam Page is as an interesting world champion. And so in that regard, you're 1,000% correct, at least in my estimation as well. I think we have something similar here. Parsath says exactly that. Hangman is far better chasing the title. The unsatisfying reigns just builds more sympathy for him. It all goes back. And honestly, I have I think the intro to a video written on the topic of why babyface champions are simply hard to book. I mean, we've seen this time after time after time. Cody Rhodes often gets a lot of slack for or flack, not slack. They don't cut him slack. They give him flack for being a boring champion. And it's all about the writing. And it boils down to this. Once somebody has accomplished their ultimate goal, it's kind of end of story. Generally speaking, across all other, narratives or all other mediums like film, TV, books, or whatever. Somebody accomplishes their goal. That's usually it. You can do sequels. I mean, comic books is a rare exception where the story just never ends and they have to continually. But that's why each comic book character only kind of has like a handful of meaningful stories. Like with Batman, for example, you could probably count 10 really meaningful stories that are really, really good. And the reason why they're really, really good is, well, number one, Batman is a pretty complex character given his backstory, and he's just a dude and all that kind of stuff. Like Superman, I think you can maybe count 5 compelling stories in, God, how many years has it been? It's coming like 90 years. And there's like maybe 5 decent Superman stories out there. Maybe there's 10 Batman. Maybe you can get up to 20 with Batman, depending. But usually those are contingent on really good villains. Anyways, I'm getting away from my central thesis of, booking a babyface champion in a narrative form that never ends, that's constantly being written. That's difficult. That's why I think one reason the Attitude Era is so well regarded is because Steve Austin got that title, number one, as like a semi-good guy, but we can call him a good guy. He lost it within 3 months? Something like that. And he was back on the chase and he lost it again, back on the chase. And somebody else had it. And then somebody else had it. And he would have these little feuds that would go off to the side. Booking a long-term babyface champion simply is not easy in the world of pro wrestling and in outside of the world of pro wrestling, in regular narrative, fiction or whatever. It's just not easy, regardless of how interesting or not a person is, or a character is, I should say, trying to continually stack the deck against these people. That's the thing. Now, there's another hot take here, I think, that I want to touch on as well. Bucket Dipper says, Hangman's second title reign did a far better job of cementing him as the face of AEW, and him losing the title this soon isn't a negative because of that. I agree with this. However, the win helped cement him as like AEW's face or whatever. But, and this is where AEW and WWE are kind of similar these days. Yes, you could say with WWE, Cody is like the face of the company. He's the guy that they put out there and, et cetera, et cetera. But now I think more than ever, WWE and AEW especially, and we'll just focus on AEW because that's what we're talking about here, they are ensembles. I don't think the company really can rely on like that one person. They have multiple people that help push their company. WWE is a little bit different because they have like 5 or 6 people who can really propel, like CM Punk is a draw, Cody's a draw, Roman's a draw, et cetera, et cetera. But AEW, really the thing that I love about AEW right now is that My main complaint about them a year ago was I don't find many of their characters terribly compelling. And if you don't have compelling characters, you're really just stuck with what they actually did do really well, which was the in-ring product. Now, they have a bunch of characters who have really developed well. And they're starting to put them in situations that make them really interesting because there's been enough time that they've built up situations. For example, the Callis family. My favorite thing right now, and I know a lot of AEW fans' favorite thing, is the Okada-Takeshita situation. I think that's magnificent. I think it's wonderful. I think it's awesome. Now with Swerve back, is Hangman going to be okay with Swerve wanting a piece of that world title shot? How is that going to play out given their history? So much of WWE's success is built on the history of the wrestlers involved because WWE's been around for a very long time. AEW's been around now. They're coming up on their 7th year. And so much of what they're doing now is interesting because it's based off of the history now of the company, especially over the last 2 years or so. And so you've got that great, foundation of their history of these characters. And now that they have decided, or now that they've started to play with the dynamics between these characters, it's actually really interesting stuff. Their week-to-week television is still, I think it still needs a little bit more of that sports entertainment to it. But I think it's still, getting to the point. Now, will that translate to bringing in viewers? I don't know. It's a tough landscape right now, but I'm just speaking to the quality of the product. So, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. AJ Daniel says, Samoa Joe rescued that belt from Adam Page. I think it's been proven twice now. Hangman just doesn't work as a guy to put the title on and try to carry the company because both reigns were mediocre at best. I don't think it's a matter of carrying the company. The ensemble is going to do that. The cast is going to do that. If you can go from segment to segment to segment and be like, man, I'm entertained by this. Next segment, oh, I'm entertained by these people. Oh, I'm entertained by these people. Then that's potentially a winning formula right there. If you have one segment where it's like, oh, I'm really entertained by this, and then another one where it's like, this is kind of crap, then people are going to start flipping the channel. So I think it's more of an ensemble thing these days, and I think that goes for WWE too. Your boy says Joe going over is a really exciting move for the world title, but he should have beat Hanger clean. Also, I love Brodito, but Brody with a singles title immediately. I agree with the Brody thing. It's funny because they're an amazing tag team, a fantastic tag team, but I kind of want Brody King just to go solo. I don't know why. I just think branding wise, he just comes off cooler as a solo guy. I was never a fan of the Brodito name. It just sounds like something people came up with on Twitter and then they ran with it, which is probably what happened. In any event, FTR getting those titles, I'm fine with that. Hopefully, Brodito will break up. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I don't know. Going back to the Joe thing, I don't think he should have beat Hangman clean. Because Hangman is supposed to, within the story, he's supposed to be a really leveled up guy. He's supposed to be a guy who literally did just beat Joe clean with 3 buckshot lariats a month ago. So I don't know that would make sense. And Joe being a guy who's got, number one, Hook still in the stable. All of his dojo guys. He had Shibata coming out there. Eddie Hobbs coming out there, ripping the chain off. Is it Death Rider-esque? Maybe. But that's what you need for Hangman Adam Page. You need the odds to be stacked against him. And I feel like it would have been really underwhelming for Joe to have simply beat him. Next up, we've got OJ the Black. Okada versus Takeshita will be AEW's best rivalry since Swerve Hangman. I agree 1,000%. I'm already super invested in this. Largely based on my one caveat is I wish that they would. Takeshita kind of comes off like a chump sometimes. Like Okada in the pre-show match goes for a handshake and he gives him the old middle finger again. Takeshita shouldn't have taken that middle finger and snapped it right off. I get that he is the babyface here, but he really should not be much. And I think they're building to the moment when Takeshita explodes on Okada. But that moment probably should have come yesterday at the beginning of the pay-per-view. At least in some way, shape, or form. Because nobody should take this amount. No fighter should take this amount of abuse, verbal abuse from somebody else and just sort of take it. Nobody should just take that lying down. And I feel like Takeshita needs to start doling some of that out. But I get it. I think they're building to a moment. But I think it's going to be a terrific feud, and the matches are going to be amazing. JMC says the segment with Okada, Takeshita, and Fletcher was a massive success in that it made me feel extremely hyped for the Continental Classic this year. The thing that I loved about that so much, well, that's the wrong thing. The thing that I loved about that so much is that one thing that us over at the Going On Raw podcast always talk about is the most interesting thing about characters and stories in wrestling is the dynamic between them. And so you have this very organic situation where Okada and Takeshita have this thing, right? Fletcher's relying on these guys to help him out. They are nowhere to be found. He loses his title. He shows up. He's like, okay, you guys are so focused on each other. I get left out in the cold. I'm without my title now. So you know what? I'm going to get in the Continental Classic. And Takeshita had already said he's going to get in the Continental Classic as well. And it's like, it's a moment that's like, oh shit. So now you have this huge faction, 3 of which are like top guys. And they all varying reasons for being against each other. All within the same faction. I think that's a recipe for some really good stuff. So I'm happy with that as well. Let's see here. What else? Hayden Riley says, Mox is truly the ace of AEW. He's done a lot to put so many others over. That is going to be an interesting story as well. Because you had Pac winning last night. You had in the Casino Gauntlet, the Death Riders really coming off as an actual threat. The reaction of Ricochet to dealing with all 3 of the remaining Death Riders being in that match, I thought was awesome. And this is one misfire I think AEW's had over the past 6 months to a year, is not really exploring the dynamic between the faction members. I wish that was done a little bit more. But whatever happens, be it on Wednesday with Dynamite, if they start hinting it or if they just do it, Mox getting kicked out of the Death Riders should be an angle that has all AEW fans just captivated. This is the potential to be executed in a way that could really, really, really be good. And yeah, putting over Kyle O'Reilly like this, it'll be interesting to see if they give Kyle O'Reilly kind of the Mark Briscoe treatment, where you have a guy who's been around forever, and maybe in some situations, the proper thing would be use the old guy to get the young people over. And they're making the most out of Mark Briscoe. And now it seems like they might be giving that same treatment to Kyle O'Reilly. So yeah, I was surprised. I was really surprised at that, even though I know Mox has a history of tapping out. This was whatever the match was, a do whatever you want match. No DQ, I think it was. A false count. No, it wasn't false count. Whatever it was a no holds barred match. And so you had the potential for like this to be like a Mox match. It was Mox's match. And Kyle O'Reilly still won. I was shocked. By that. So, yeah, I thought that's really good stuff. And yeah, Mox is definitely the ace of the company. Zondo says the Ops are just the Death Riders again already. A faction of badasses that like to fight that win by cheating, led by a grizzled vet that wants to shape the company. They even won the title when someone turned heel on the babyface champ. Loved it, by the way. It's just funny. I mean, yeah. One way to stack the deck against faces is factions, bad guy factions that cheat. I still think that the Death Riders were really hindered in the beginning, because by the end I was fine with the Death Riders. Now I really like them. But when Mox showed up and he was like, this ain't your company anymore, Tony. And it seemed kind of obvious, especially with all the picture with Shane McMahon and the reports that they were meeting with Shane. It was like, oh, are they going to do like Shane as a mysterious benefactor or some shit like that? And then it didn't happen, and they just turned into like normal bad guy faction. And then they were relatively entertaining towards the end of the Death Riders as, world title guys. And now we've got the Ops, and it'll be interesting to see, because they haven't really been explicitly like, oh, this company is too soft, we want to change the company. And that was sort of the Death Riders thing. And so this has a different flavor to it, but it'll be interesting to see if there are any parallels now that he is world champion, and now that, we're back kind of in the same situation. Head of a bad guy faction, world title guy. We'll see how long this lasts. That's the other thing about the Death Riders, that it lasted a really long time. Next up, we've got John Murphy, who says, while people often exhibit tribalism, it's hard to argue that the wrestling in a vacuum is excellent. As a casual AEW fan, this makes our pay-per-views excellent to watch. They always kill it on pay-per-view. Always. Every single time. This one, for my money, might have been the match per match. There was not a stinker on the card. There was not like one of those weird Jericho matches that was like, a 1.5 star, 2 star, why is this even here match. There were no matches where it was like, well, this didn't even get a build, or it had a really small build on Collision. No, they didn't do any of that. Every single match on this card was built in a proper way, and every single one delivered. And like the second longest match was Mercedes and Chris Statlander. It only went 23 minutes. That to me is a recipe for success. I cannot stand when 3 matches in a row go 30 minutes or 25 plus. I count me out on that one. That's when I start thinking to myself, God damn, this is just going really long. And do we need all this time to tell a story? So that's why I think Full Gear was maybe like, I don't know, besides All In, probably my favorite AEW pay-per-view of the year. Let's see here. Possibly Maddie says, the national title looks classic, but I feel like it clashes hardcore with AEW's color explosion aesthetic. By the way, damn it. I am not a fan of AEW's color explosion aesthetic. I absolutely hate it. I really wish that they would rebrand and pick a color scheme and stick with that. Let's take a look at the AEW championship. Oh, that's the NWA Television Championship, which looks exactly like the AEW, the new national championship. I love what I think. Is this a blue tint on the strap? I think it is, but I'd have to see it like in other pictures. But I think this is a blue strap. Otherwise, it's literally it's the television championship. They probably should have tried to vary it up a little bit more. It almost comes off like a troll. It's so television championship. It looks like a troll. That being said, it's very old school. I'm fine with it. But in that, I'm fine with the NWA Television Championship because, oh my God, it's the same picture meme. Cygna says Mark Briscoe finally winning the title was the best part of the show. Yeah, you got to love. I don't really know what else to say. You got to love that. I thought there was a lot of great. My favorite part of the show, probably Stokely's belly intro. I thought that was cool too. Let's see here. What is this? Oh, Sleem, I think is how you say the name, says Hangman versus Joe felt very Fed-coded. Yeah, but kind of in a good way. I've been saying for a while, I think AEW needs a little more of the sports entertainery stuff. There's nothing wrong having a little dose of WWE in there because WWE does some cool shit sometimes. When they add a little bit of that soap opera bullshit, you got it. Wrestling needs that. That's a vital component to wrestling, to good pro wrestling, is a little bit of the soap opera bullshit. Hamurai Black says Pac needs to put the bag over Moxley. I think he has the mic skills to lead the group and look very believable. I'm kind of curious what most of you think. Assuming they kick out Moxley, which I think they will, who should lead the group? Claudio? Marina? Pac? I kind of agree. Pac has the charisma. Claudio works best as quiet guy who doesn't talk. That's how he works best. Pac at the very least should be their spokesman. If assuming they kick Mox out, I think he should definitely be that. That being said, maybe they shouldn't have a leader. Maybe that should be the point of the Death Riders, is that they don't actually have a leader. I think that could work. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Cam says people complain about how predictable a show looks. Then when the show does way different things than they expect, they also complain that it's dumb booking. Some people just want to be mad and just stop watching wrestling. You people. Yeah. So this was kind of interesting. I did not get on social media to look at the reaction of this until like this morning. I got on briefly last night just to check some just see if there was any news like during the podcast. But I was really surprised. I guess I shouldn't say I was surprised, because more and more I get on wrestling social media, specifically Twitter, the more and more awful I think it is. Because like, it's one thing to have like, to express your opinion. Everybody should be able to express their opinion. That's fine. But good Lord, the amount of like, I mean, I know this is nothing new. I understand this is nothing new, but it's like people aren't even attempting to make an honest, like a genuine assessment of AEW show last night. It's crazy to me. There's just so many bad takes. I don't know. That's why I think I'm just going to stay off that shit. Dangerous Flower says Tony set Mercedes and Stat up to fail by giving them a mid-build, putting them second to last in a very long pay-per-view and putting them in front of an already dead, tired crowd. Yeah, by that time, the crowd was pretty tired. I think they put on Stat Mercedes after the $1 million match, which was the weirdest part of the booking last night, was the 2 bloodbath matches. They probably should have put Mercedes and Stat either between the bloodbath matches or maybe before the first bloodbath match. Maybe. But putting it where it went, yes. I don't think it... Okay, so I'll correct myself by saying this. That match also had the most methodical build to it, in that they told a story that almost necessitated some slower story beats heading into like the last third of it. And I feel like doing that towards the end of a pay-per-view is probably not the best pacing move in the world for your crowd or your audience. So yeah, I definitely think that should have gone way, way sooner in the crowd. Maybe if you want to swap the 2 women's matches, have the Mercedes Stat match go on second. I still say like smack dab in the middle of pay-per-view would have been better though. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of agree with that. That being said, I thought it was a terrific match. And that's always going to happen to some match basically at that point in the pay-per-view, especially AEW when they bust out a 4.5 hour long pay-per-view, which they probably shouldn't be doing. The Gecko says, not only does blood mean nothing in AEW, but hardcore matches also lose their meaning. You have arguably the greatest roster in history of wrestling. It's okay. Just let them wrestle. Case in point, Darby versus Pac is absolutely awesome. All right. So damn it, stop doing that. I take your point. But at the same time, Pac versus Darby was hardly an actual wrestling match, even though that's what the stipulation was. Because Darby Allin was still doing crazy Darby Allin stuff. But I take your point. There's another one about blood here that we're going to finish off the show with. And it is, Hello Empty Bus Seat says, too much blood. The wife and I cannot get into this stuff because it seems like every other match is an absolute juice fest. Feels like they're just trying to check a box, not actually use blood to enhance a story. I kind of feel like each match is given its own clean slate, and wrestlers are just opting to do the blood thing. And maybe Tony Khan should cut back on that a little bit. Maybe he should look at the entirety of the show and be like, okay, I don't know if we should be doing this here. And maybe he is doing that and he was just okay with all the blood. I personally am okay with the blood because each match to me is a clean slate. I do think that in the pacing of the show, putting 2 bloodbaths back to back was just sort of a weird decision. But I do think that each match is its own monster. And if blood works, blood works. And at this point, to be honest with you, yes, I understand the point of view that when you look at WWE's product and they do blood, it's like, oh, wow, that was impactful because they never do blood. WWE is just a different product. I expect it to be a sanitized product, and I enjoy what they offer or don't enjoy what they offer based on what they are. And so, yes, I get surprised when they do use blood. AEW, it's kind of like a rated R programming or a PG-13 at best. And so with that, I kind of expect blood. I was surprised that Darby and Pac didn't have blood. Did I need it? No. Did I need it in any of the matches? No. Was I okay with it? Yeah. Do I keep on asking questions? Yes. I don't know why. Anyways. Yeah, blood I'm okay with, but I understand when people aren't, and I'll be honest with it. It honestly seems like a couple things AEW, they're just like, this isn't our DNA. Bloody matches, multiple across pay-per-views. That's going to happen. Oftentimes on Dynamite, on regular TV. That's going to happen. Doing the thing where you have a pre-show match that leads into a pay-per-view and you start the pay-per-view halfway through the match. That's here to stay. I personally love that, by the way. I think it's great. In any event, let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. Till next time, we'll see you guys around.